This is the Colorado Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
For 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada. Streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is February 16th, 2024, and this is episode 426 of Workshop Radio. How are all my delinquents out there? In just a moment, I actually have the delinquent bunch in the background. We have got a good crowd of folks to come on to chat all about chapter 7 through 9 of Atlas Shrugged. Real quick, two things. Well, the first one is, got to thank our sponsor. They keep the lights on and the generator fueled up. And tonight just happens to be Two Chicks Homestead and Homestead Ham Radio. They are one and the same. They're good friends of mine. Give them a follow. They have a great podcast. If you're looking for something else to stick in the old ear holes, add Two Chicks Homestead podcast to your podcast player, and you'll be all set. And you'll see the bearded chick come on here in just a minute. So, and other than that, guys, bring everybody on. Give me one moment.
Yeah, it's better.
There we are. How are you guys?
Awesome.
How's it going?
Good. Byron looks like he's having some trouble. I'm going to kick him out and
Hi, Byron.
Back in. He's been spinning. Sometimes that happens. You get lost in, I don't know, yeah. He's a looter tonight. How about that? So
your intro was aces, Tim.
Thank you, John Palmer. I really appreciate it. I'm going to throw this out here since we're live. Anybody else? I have been struggling with some sort of ghost in the machine, and I've thank you guys for letting me know. But there have been probably the last 10 or 12 episodes, my intro has been looping. It's been echoing. And I have tried everything I can to eliminate it, including making sure there's no extra tabs open. The only thing that seems to be working is possibly hard muting my microphone. So we'll see. But if you guys keep hearing it, let me know. I try to check on my end, but sometimes I forget. So thank you, folks. Well, we're going to start this evening by getting the young lady in my bottom right-hand corner here to introduce herself, because this is her first time on the show. How are you, Sandy?
Doing pretty good, Tim. Thank you.
Good. So you and Jeff and your two daughters, actually,
Yep.
I talk about community all the time. You guys were on a trip and you stopped, and it wasn't a short trip. It was a good day's drive. You stopped in to visit with Becky and I. What time of year was that? It was early.
In the summer, so
June. June. Okay.
June.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We sat outside, and you guys get to meet our large pack of dogs.
That was awesome.
Well, it's good to see.
And
then
a dog cuddling all night. That was great.
And then we get to hang out at SRF this year too. At least in passing, it was a kind of a busy event, but you know how it is.
So good.
So we're in.
So you're
tonight.
saying you said it was summer? It was one of the 2 days that it's not cold and miserable up here?
It was, yes, that is true. Although I ain't gonna lie,
be fair.
We have had a beautiful winter here so far. Other than, of course, the minus 46 touch that we had for 10 days or 3 days. Sorry, but I know that sounds insane, but this has been the warmest prairie winter I've had. How about you guys in Manitoba there, Sandy?
Yeah, it's been beautiful. Oh, yeah. It felt like spring.
How about you, Nate?
We are 26 right now. And last week it was 65.
Oh. Nice. How about Mr. Palmer? How's it been in your neck of the woods, brother?
It's been pretty good this week, but we, just like everybody else in the country, we had there several weeks ago. I guess it was last month. Got really cold and nasty there for a couple of weeks or something. But the last couple of days, it's gotten cold. Right now it's 38 degrees and about 30-mile-an-hour winds, so it probably feels like it's 28 degrees.
It's been warmer here than, oh man. Hey, I think let's see. We got Byron Robertson again. Maybe we'll give him a shot here and see what we're got.
I think last week it was snowing in Tennessee. and
Yeah.
it was 65 up here.
So I just put out the last episode of, well, the last for now, Delinquent Gully Chronicles of the where we've been building the property down in Tennessee. And my neighbor there, Jamie, off-grid ping from up the road, he sent me some footage last month of the gully all covered in snow. So if anybody's interested in seeing the elusive Tennessee snow, you can check it out because it's in there. They're a little bit, not a lot, but it was pretty cool. So
I got Kentucky
That was a
snow
good
out there
video.
right now.
what's that, Byron?
I got Kentucky snow started out here right now.
Oh, you can keep it, brother.
I don't want it.
Thanks, John Palmer, too. I appreciate it. Yeah, I enjoyed that. It was fun. But yeah, so I'm out of footage for now. So I got to get down. I'm heading March 20th to go down for like 6 weeks. So it'll be good. I'm looking forward to it. So
real
go ahead,
quick,
Nate.
Tim, before we get started, and I can say this before I forget it.
Yes.
Check your echo cancellation on your mic.
Okay. Are you getting anything now or no?
No, but that might be what it is when you do your intro.
I bet you're right. Yep, because I will check that. Thank you. And I will do my best to remember to do that afterwards. Because I think that might have, every so often they update the system and it used to automatically default. And thank you. All right. Tech Support Live with Nate on from Two Chicks Homestead. If you need any ham radio help, give him a holler. He's good at that too. So, all right. So we're doing chapter 7 through 9. I would say so far, these 3 chapters, or especially 8 and 9, have been my favorite of the first. So what do they call them, Sandy? Is it 3 books, 3 sections? Because she's like 1 with 10 chapters, 2 with 10 chapters, and 3. Is there?
Looks like it's
Here's
part.
part.
I think it says.
What is it?
It says part.
Part. Okay.
Part,
So
yeah.
you can definitely tell that she's winding up this part. You know, she's kind of creating some tension in the good sense, like positive tension to, kind of end it on something. So it's going to be good. All right. So, let's go around the horn so far and we'll start with, I guess, maybe your favorite moment from this section, and then we'll work our way through kind of the narrative. So let's start with Byron Roberts down below. How are you, Byron? And then we'll work our way around the horn.
I'm kind of still a little behind on 9. I haven't reread 9. It's been a while, but I had a little busy. The father-in-law passed away this week, so it was
sorry, brother.
Sorry.
Thank you. But I like the Reardon Metal. It's just they're the best stuff. Because I see that I have salesmen come to me all the time with trucks and equipment like, oh, well, this is the best. You got to use the top of the line stuff. I mean,
And he put his money where
goes out there, buys another factory and the true money at work.
If you don't mind sharing, what was your father-in-law's name?
Bud.
Bud. All right. Well, for what it's worth, why don't we dedicate this episode to Bud? So I never knew the man, but I know you, Byron, and I'm sure he was a good dude. So, all right, let's go, John Palmer. If you're there,
Yeah.
what was your moment, or what was the one that you took away this time?
I guess the part I liked a lot was where they run the train across the new track. I mean, that was just a shining moment. But I really think that they should have considered a different name for this book, and it would have been kind of catchy, and it could have been Whiny Worthless Wackadoodles instead of.
I thought you were going to say, who is John Galt? I gotta say,
oh my gosh,
I am never ceased to be amazed at how many ingenious ways that Ayn Rand ties in or uses the phrase, who is John Galt? Just about every chapter, and it almost always has a different meaning. It's pretty neat, actually, how she does that.
I almost want to butt in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've actually counted how many times they've used who is John Galt, or the word John Galt in the book for fun.
And how many was it?
I pulled it up, like, in the first 2 chapters, only like 3 or 4 times, but once they start the John Galt lines, it gets close to like 30 per chapter, or.
Oh, wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
How about you, Sandy? What would your, I know you've been
I
through
think
this.
John stole mine because the John Galt. I think the whole creation of the John Galt line and definitely ending in that the train that was going to crash and burn over and kill everybody was the good one.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Nate?
If anybody was kind of poking around in any of the Telegram chats today, you would have seen mine. Dagny is bitching about the fact that she can't find anybody good to work on our railroad lines.
Right.
Boy, howdy, isn't that current day stuff right there?
Oh yeah, it is.
You know, you're talking 70 to 80 years later, and it's still a resounding issue.
I think two of us in here this week have fired somebody, haven't they? Byron did yeah. He's like, yeah. So that was like
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you, he was late in a year's period 25 times.
Yikes.
There you go. Yeah,
I mean,
great worker, but ours was like 10 sick days just since January 1st, and not anyway. So there you are. But yes, so you are 100% right, Nate. It is hard to find a good
mm-hmm.
And it's not for lack of compensation for the most part either. We pay in the daycare significantly above market value, and people just don't want to work. You give them the job, they don't show up, or I'll show up 3 days out of 5, you know? So,
or they want to use you just for unemployment, at least down here.
Oh no, that's
that they're doing, you know, they've applied for this job, you know.
Mm-hmm.
On the East Coast where I grew up, that was big.
Interview and they never call you back.
So I would say my favorite moment in this section was, again, I love the whole chapter on the John Galt line, but I would say as they're going along at 100 mile an hour, and every so often Dagny looks out and sees somebody out there, and they talk about kind of this scattered army or security, and everybody has their own weapon. Between that and the drawing lots for the person who's going to conduct the train, I smiled. I actually think if you're in the Telegram group, I got pretty excited. I love it when she puts the union guy in his place. I don't want to say I'm anti-union. I'm not, but I just haven't had a lot of good experience with unions. So it was when she just, I love Dagny all around, because I mean, today there are strong women leaders in position, but when Ayn Rand wrote this book, it must have been the absolute exception of the rule for there to be. Would you think, Sandy? I gotta kind of chime in on you definitely. There.
It'd be pretty rare.
I remember when I put together the episode on the history of the 55-gallon drum, and there was a lady. I know, boy, sounds like a dull man's club, doesn't it? So anyway,
no, I had a friend who used to be obsessed with 55-gallon drums. It sounds awesome.
It was a good episode, but the lady, I think it was a lady who was running that company at that time, and it was around the early 1900s, and it was very unheard of. So I enjoy it. I like hearing that. All right, so let's work our way through here. We had Reardon proposed a new bridge for Dagny because they basically had been saying, hey, let's make it out of wood or make it out of steel, and it's going to cost you as much as, I forget what the exact numbers were. But what I really loved was when Hank was it late at night, and all of a sudden he was inspired to come up with the new drawings of the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? Anybody? Yeah. What do you think of that?
And the truss.
Go ahead, Sandy.
I think it was like the combining of the arch and the truss or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
So the original, she got the original figure of $2 million, and then Hank gave her $800,000, but I don't think they ever said what the new bridge would cost, the redesign.
Because there was a small suggestion that it would carry, what did he say? It would carry, was it 4 trains? Yep, 4 trains for not much more money. Was that the idea? I think
no, it was a fraction of the price.
Fraction of the price, yeah. So anyway, there's so much to unpack in these 3 chapters, and I loved it. It was the John Galt chapter, I think, is probably my favorite so far going in. But all right, so I remember the first time I read this book, I believe it was it last winter or 2 winters ago? Dr. Potter shows up at Hank's office and he says, "Hey, would you mind not selling Reardon metal anymore?" Like, this guy, one of the weirdest things you could ever, I don't even understand. And when Hank basically tells him to pound sand, he's like, "Well, here, how about this? How about I give you a blank government check?"
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that never goes on.
Never. I actually, that was something I wanted to kind of mention. Was I couldn't think of one right at the moment, but can anybody kind of think of a modern example of this sort of thing?
F-35 project.
Oh, can you expand?
It's the fighter pilot for the F-35 fighter plane.
Okay.
That thing, I think, has run maybe $1 trillion over.
Yeah, it's a crazy number.
Yeah, I mean, it's astronomical. I mean, I know it's at least a couple $100 billion over budget.
Jeez.
And it's still not fully functional.
So, Sandy, I just thought of one that has been in the news as of late. So, and the reason I singled out Sandy is because it has a Canadian bent to it. But during all the craziness that was COVID, the government took it upon themselves to launch an app called ArriveCan. And it was supposed to cost $80,000. I mean, the government can't even get out of bed in the morning and spend $80,000. You know what I mean? Yes. So the idea was to track people. It was to tell them to go live in a hotel, all of that. The idea was to make it easier for the government to track you during the lockdowns.
And before we get our chips implanted.
Exactly. Yes. Because that'll make it easier as we go along. Now, here's the deal. They can't even tell how much it cost. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions, nobody knows because they didn't even keep records. And this is not like, George Washington time. This is 3 years ago, and they don't know how much they spent on it. How does that shit happen?
That's a reoccurring government theme. I think something with the in the United States too. They have something like that where they're missing all that money. Is it for?
Well, wasn't there one like the day before 9/11?
Yeah, $2 trillion missing.
Yeah,
right.
It just magically disappears.
Yeah, the records just happened to be in the Pentagon.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, you look at Independence Day, the movie. What do they say? You don't think, was it $50,000 for a toilet seat or a hammer or something? I can't quite remember the quote.
So I looked it up real quick. The F-35 Lightning program is $183 billion over budget, 10 years behind schedule for 125 planes.
Oh dear goodness!
Money well spent.
If that's
so, look, guys.
Yes,
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not cheap, but I can be bought. So, if somebody offers me a blank check, I'm just saying. I'm.
I get it, John. I do, because I'm not gonna judge anybody. Because we've taken well advantage of government grants over the last few years in working for our businesses. And I've always taken the bent that Jack Spirko always talked about. He said that if they're willing to give you some of your stolen tax dollars back, then take it and run. Because if you don't take them, someone else is going to. And I'm sure they'll do their damnedest to collapse the economy eventually anyway. So you might as well do the best you can in the meantime.
Read it while you can.
Absolutely. So Hank tells him to pound sand, says, "Get out of here." And the dude is like absolutely flabbergasted that Hank wouldn't take a blank check. So what do? The State Science Institute publishes a smear job. If it's not the perfect example of political doublespeak, because it doesn't say anything. It legitimately says nothing about the safety. But then they do, there's an in-camera interview or whatever, and he's like, "I'm not saying it's dangerous, but I certainly wouldn't let my kids ride on the train," winking at the camera, Oh,
the long term.
That reminds me of a CBS reporter that I saw the other day. It was just a snippet where they had that shooting at the Super Bowl parade, and Biden comes out, calling for gun control again, because that's what they always do, is trying to pull on people's emotion strings, even though none of the stuff they push for would have done anything about that gang violence activity is what it was that happened up there. But, the CBS reporter's like, well, he has to say that to his base, even though that's not really a popular thing, and it's not anything that's polling right now as something that's important to the voting public. He still has to say it because that's what his base expects him to say. So it's like, look, I know that none of this is going to happen, but I'm still going to say this stuff because this is what you want me to say. So I'm going to be a good little puppet. It's like, what?
I was reminded earlier today of why I'm a voluntarist or an anarchist. And I guess it was all summed up in this article from Tennessee today. Tennessee wants to ban cold beer sold at stores. So in a state where you have constitutional carry for firearms, you can carry open, closed, whatever you want, in any way you want, who strike the drum of freedom for firearms, thinks that the individual should not be able to buy cold beer at the liquor at the convenience stores. How do you bring those two together? Where does that? I don't know. Anyway, it is, and the guy's like, well, you've never been touched by a drunk driver, dude. You can use that exact same concept against gun rights, and it has a lot more weight than a gosh darn cold beer at a convenience store. So you can't have your freedom. And anyway, there's my soapbox. I'll move along. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. All right, let's take a look at the comments here. So Sue Me said Hank redesigned the bridge the night they passed the Equalization of Opportunity bill. That's a good example of taking that negative energy and redirecting it into something positive for sure. Rachel said the scientists that Dagny visited said that for years they'd accomplished nothing. Reardon was making them look bad. Yep, I was actually heading into that next. That's a good point to talk about. So let's go with Sandy here. What did you, if you want to expand on that a little, Sandy, when Dagny went to talk to him, the idea, or well, no, this was during Hank's conversation, wasn't it?
No, which one? When Dagny went to talk to Stadler?
So sorry, I'll back up. Hank, when the guy came from the Institute to chat with him, he basically, oh, no, I think I'm wrong, aren't I, guys? Let me back up again. So it's when Dagny goes to talk to the guy, right?
It confronts Stadler over the smear campaign against the metal.
And he
put her out of, not put her out of business, but basically halted their business.
And he basically implies that they haven't been able to do anything much more than a lubricant that probably isn't as good as the one that came before it, and so they don't want to be looked bad upon. Really,
it's more than that, though. He defends what the institution is doing, because it's kind of like revealing like his attitude towards mankind is like he has no respect for people's intelligence, people's reason. He figures science is pure and separate, and people are either too dumb or too self-serving to do what's right. They have to be forced to, which kind of sort of has parallels today.
Sure it does. Yeah. And I mean, I'd love to just shit on the left here, but I mean, it goes both ways. It's easy for folks to sit back and say, oh yeah, that's the liberals, or no, it's both. And I mean, that is both sides of the dichotomy say, sorry, you're not smart enough to build steps yourself, so the government needs to build a set of steps that cost $12,000 instead of $500. And
if you do build the steps, we better tear them up because they might not be safe.
Absolutely. Or we may possibly come in and fill the skate parks full of sand because you shouldn't be outside exercising. We know better than you. And that seems to be the undercurrent, doesn't it, Sandy, of a lot of the, I guess, the antagonists of the book, that they just really feel, and I guess that kind of reflects on Hank and Dagny as well, though.
Yes.
They also feel that what they believe is 100% right, and to hell with everybody else. So how do we reconcile
they're not trying to trick anybody, like where they're not trying to coerce anyone else to their views. They just want people to get out of their way.
That's true.
Whereas Battler, he figures that he needs the money, so people are too stupid to give it to him. So he needs people
I have
like
a quote
Ferris
from the book.
Oh, quote coming in.
How can one deal with truth when one deals with the public?
That is good. I like that. So, what do you think, Byron, about that entire concept of the idea that some people need to be sheltered from the truth, I guess? Or no, let me back up a little. Let's look at it from the guy who runs the office there. He feels okay. Do you think that the dude legitimately thinks he's a good guy?
Yeah, I think so. He thinks in himself, in his own little world, that he's he's an angel.
What do you think, Nate? I'm wondering about that too, because this has been a concept I've been beating around in my head a lot lately.
I don't think anything should be hidden from people who pay taxes.
Right.
I don't care what it is. Government should not be hiding anything and be 100% transparent. I don't care what it is. That's full stop for me.
You really think the public? You really think we could handle that?
I don't care.
I know.
You can't handle the truth.
It's time for people to take the blinders off and fucking deal with it.
So what? That's what I don't get, because here, and I know we're all going down a rabbit hole at this point, but the government is just people, right? They're just some average Joe off the street that, they're just some Alzheimer's old man or, an orange dude who just got elected by regular people as well. So what makes them so damn special that they get to keep the secrets, right? Especially considering that our hard-earned sweat and equity pays their bills. Go ahead, Nate.
535 people run this country.
Right.
Of 335 million people. And they keep us fighting back and forth over what they're doing in office.
Mm-hmm. You don't really think they're the ones that are running the company, do you? I mean,
well, there's probably a few more behind the scenes, Sure.
On paper, it's 535 people. If you really want to get down to brass taxes, you're looking at maybe 10 people run this country. And they're all people that aren't elected.
Yeah.
Because you hear the stories consistently of new senators or congressmen or whatever. They basically have to fall in line. They have to vote for pet bills and stuff. So how many of the top guys, even just within Congress or the Senate, are controlling all of these other young senators and congressmen below them, right?
And who's then, controlling them?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all right. So here's a famous one: Jimmy Carter.
Okay.
So I'm going back a ways. Jimmy Carter is arguably the worst president we've ever had in this country.
I have no idea, but it sounds believable.
His campaign promise was, "I'm going to bring out everything about Roswell, all the truth."
Really?
Everything you guys want to know about Roswell, I'm going to find the truth, and I'm going to let it go. Let me pick that rug up and just sweep it underneath and go back to my job.
But Nate, you need to know. You need to know that they didn't know the real truth until they got into office, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, Nate. You know how political, how campaign promises are. Read my lips.
Yeah.
No new Texas.
And then you got Clinton doing the exact same thing. And yeah. Look what happened to him.
I mean, I'm just going to say that Trump was going to drain the swamp, but the swamp's still there. So
yeah, the swamp drained him.
Yeah.
$354 million.
I think what was left was Biden. So speaking of losing government funding, I'm going to give you, I've probably shared this story before, but my dad, for the first few years of my life, worked on a military base. He wasn't government or anything. He worked in the Groceteria, which was the attached grocery store. But he saw a ton of waste there. One of his favorite that he loved to tell was there were two guys who were hired just to change light bulbs on the base. Now, you would think that would be a difficult job. Well, no, basically they had an office where the two of them sat around and drank coffee all day. And when there was a light bulb burn out, someone would call them. The two of them would take their little ladder in their truck. They would go down. One dude would hold the ladder. The other guy would go up, change the light bulb. And then they would go back and sit in their coffee shack again. Now, they also, at the end of the year, the budget, when it got to the point where they were worried that they didn't, they wanted to make sure they kept their budget for the next year, they would take hundreds of thousands of dollars of building supplies and bury them in the ground. They would take tens of thousands of dollars of photography supplies. This one guy I knew, and he would just take them home with him and fill his deep freezes with them, simply because if they didn't, they would lose their budget.
I see that every day.
Yep. I bet you do. All right. So, Byron, what does Dagny decide to call her railroad when she decides to go out on her own?
Oh, you didn't.
Nate, go ahead.
Well, I know the railroad was a John Galt line.
Yes, that's the one I was looking for. I wasn't trying to trick anybody. It was a great name, and I thought it was kind of interesting. So basically, to back up just a little bit, Dagny says, all right, brother, I know we're in rough shape. I'm going to step away to take the heat off of you. I'm going to basically still run the job. I'm going to put together this line, this railroad line, and you will lose you won't have any accountability on it whatsoever. Now, who else thought the first time they read it that she was possibly going to double cross her brother? Did anybody think that? Because no. I did. That's where my brain went.
I mean, to me, that was just that's a modern day double cross. I mean,
right. That's exactly, yeah. And I wouldn't have judged her for it, but obviously she didn't do that.
Because it's not what her character has been built up so far in the book. She's like, she doesn't, I mean, there's nothing that would benefit her character in that. And when I say character, I don't just mean the character Dagny. I mean the character of the character. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Her philosophical, her principle of her character, right? The thing
she loves Taggart Transport, and that would hurt Taggart Transport. She does everything. She lets her brother get the credit for everything good and takes the heat for everything bad. That's the way she's been all the way through. She doesn't care. As long as she's doing the right thing, she doesn't care who knows it. She knows it. And that's all that matters.
Yeah, and I'm right with you on that, John. I knew she wasn't going to try and screw him on that.
Maybe that's just the old angel and devil on your shoulder. Maybe that was just my devil talking that day. But I was just thinking, I'm like,
the first time I read it, it was like she could hook him. I mean, just for the
that's where my brain went. I'm not going to lie. And then, but I guess specifically Ayn Rand added in there that there was going to be an ironclad contract that said that wouldn't happen. So,
well, Jim was suspecting her of doing that too. So
because Jim would suspect that because that's
what he would do.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. WWJD, right? What would Jim do? I think we know. All right. So Dagny needed money, and she went around and picked up a ton of investors, which was great. And it was all of the producers, the people who actually believed in the free market, which was awesome. But I think my favorite moment of that was when Hank said, hey, can I see that for a minute? Who are your investors? And she hands the paper over, and Hank puts his money where his mouth is, and he says, Hank Reardon, $1 million. I'm not sure. What did we figure that would be in today's dollars? Was it about 30 to 1?
I can look it up.
Okay.
Yeah. What year was this? It was 52, right?
Yeah, it was in the early 50s.
Yeah, around there, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So while you're doing that, Nate, Bonnie Blue said military and brand new computers. Yep, same type of thing. Talking about not wanting to lose their budget, never taken out of the boxes.
Yep.
But how about her approaching Francisco, though? That was a good scene, too.
That, yeah, you know what? I didn't even have that in the notes. There were so many good things in these chapters. But yeah, so she went to Francisco, and that was one of the few times that she went against her principles. Would you say that, Sandy? Mm-hmm. You want to elaborate a bit?
Well, she needed the money. So this was her so-called being a beggar, but she's too honest to actually beg. But yes. And you kind of see the conflict between, kind of the conflict within Francisco, because there's something more there too at this point of the book, that he can't help her, but it's killing him.
I heard someone say the other day that I forget where it was, but something along the lines of there's no contradictions, just lack of understanding. What is it?
Check your premises.
Yes, check. Yes, that's right. Yeah, wrong. There's no contradictions, just wrong premises.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Like Ayn Rand was an absolutist as far as what she believed, but there's no lack of character flaws amongst all of her characters.
Mm-hmm.
And times when, even though these folks had these strong principles, like Dagny, or how about we'll talk a little bit later about when Hank and Dagny finally, make love, have sex, whatever you want to call it. And Hank has a bit of a philosophical inner monologue, or he's kind of beating himself up over the idea, and Dagny just comes out and she's like, here it is. This is how it's going to be. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So it's $11.5 million today.
Okay. So that's not chump change.
No.
No.
And with that same thing, remember earlier in the book, Francisco said, you're going to curse me the day I do something to you that you don't agree with.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this was it. Because he didn't give her any money.
Nope.
But he also implied during that conversation that there was going to be worse things coming down the road too, right?
Well, this is the start of it. Yes.
Right. It was, because you could tell, but I think when it came down to it, I don't know if Dagny's heart was in it, even when she went to see Francisco. It almost felt like she knew she had to ask. She probably figured he wasn't going to help her anyway, but let's just do it and get it over with, because desperation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at the very end of chapter 7, we find out kind of two quick things. We find out that the Equalization of Opportunity Bill passed. And again, I'm just going to throw it out there, but that could very easily be the name of a modern bill as well. Could it not? Does that not sound like the Anti-Inflation Act that causes inflation to go up, or whatever it happens to be,
What's Jack always say? They name the bills the exact opposite of what they're actually going to do.
Absolutely. If Peter wrote a bill, it would be, we don't kill animals. That's just simple as that. So, did I say that? Oh, I did say that. Here we go. And then we found out that Wesley Mouch double-crossed Hank. We finally really know that.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of.
I think you knew that from day one.
I think we knew it, but it comes out.
He's having secret meetings.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So, Oh, there you go. That was good, Sue Me. So Sue Me just threw up the Affordable Care Act. If anyone else,
Illinois Communities Act.
Hilarious.
The No Child Left Behind. I mean, it's just really what
Patriot Act.
There you go. Sandy wins. We're all right. Good night, folks. No, just kidding.
And that was passed by a Republican for everybody to know.
Mm-hmm.
It most certainly was. Yes, it was. I think they could have passed, a euthanasia act right at that point. Like, I mean, at post 9/11, I think. They could have passed anything they wanted for.
Yeah, post 9/11 with the word terrorist in there is going to pass.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Left wing, same bird.
Moving into chapter 8, of course, like I said, this is my second time through the book, and I actually missed this even the second time. I caught it. So what I do is I put the notes together as I read, and then I go over the Cliff's notes afterwards, and I read some of the analytics of it. So I knew that Reardon sold his ore mines to Paul Larkin, but how did I miss that Paul was in on it with Wesley Mouch and all of that? Where does it talk? Was he at that clandestine meeting in the dark?
I think so.
Okay. That's just my brain not catching the name then, I guess, because I had forgotten that was a thing.
Yeah, that's one thing you got to pay attention in this book. Man, there are so many little breadcrumbs that you can just completely and utterly miss.
Yeah.
Because there's a good 2 or 3 paragraphs where Hank and Paul go back and forth, where Hank's like, I don't care, double cross me if you want to. It's business. I know I have no say or control over this anymore. And Paul continuously acts like he's absolutely offended.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I gave you the best money from the government for this.
Yes, fresh off the printing press. We're all set, you know.
Yeah.
But I really love how Ayn Rand is really good at doing kind of mirror images a lot in the books. So he sells his ore mines to Paul Larkin, who is, you know, a taker. And then he turns around, but he sells his coal mines to Ken Daniger, one of the, at least at that time, probably one of the most upright, hardworking free market dudes. So again, it's always, there's a lot of this dichotomy that I miss. And then you kind of catch it on the reread and the reread.
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So they complete, well, yeah, you know what? I don't want to brush over the Equalization of Opportunity bill. What do you think about that, Nate?
Well, I mean, I have an issue with anybody trying to do that. It really kills entrepreneurship. Like if the way Reardon set it up, he's not monopolizing it. He's securing his future.
Right.
So he goes and spends the money on an ore mine. Well, there's one business. He goes and spends the money on the coal company. There's another business to make sure he's got coal. Then he's got the steel company. Look at Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
Dude's got like, what did I see the other day? 155 restaurants, several big box stores in his name. And it's like, it's a portfolio. It works for you.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you work your ass off to get this stuff.
Yeah.
And just like you, Tim, you have multiple businesses.
Sure.
I mean,
it's redundancy, it's security, it's independence. I guess what I've been thinking about this an awful lot lately. And every time I see when the government tries to adjust the market or restrict the market, just recently, of course, we had Bell Canada, which is one of the largest telecom companies in Canada. They just cut a whole bunch of high-paying union jobs, and they divested themselves of about half of all the radio stations that they own. So 50 or 60 in the country. And of course, the government's all up in arms, and we can't allow this to happen. This kind of shit can't happen, blah, blah, blah. And it's almost to the point where the government is so tied into the market that I don't think you could pull it out of the market at this point. I don't know. I don't know what would happen if you even attempted it, because it seems to me like the entire government exists to try to keep bowling balls in the air. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where else to go with it. It's kind of disheartening. I want, I would love to see an absolute free market, and I would love to head back toward a free market, but it seems like things like the Equalization of Opportunity bill, and yes, I know we're talking about a fictional bill, but it has kind of similarities in the real world. It just seems like that's the everyday occurrence now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so they Dagny, so they complete the John Galt line on time, which is great. Actually, I don't know, was it a little under time, Sandy, or was it right on time? Roughly?
Was it like for 3 days before?
Yeah, it was on time.
So at that point, they have this is where these, I don't know what you want to call them, figureheads are always trying to squeeze people. So first it was the scientist guy who comes in and tries to squeeze Hank. And next is probably my favorite interaction in the chapter. And this is where the union dude comes in and he's like, well, I forbid you to use union workers. I want to say that forbidding Dagny from doing anything is the wrong language to use around that lady.
Yeah.
That thing, she got her panties in a knot, and rightfully so. I love that. That was awesome.
Me too.
So she basically, I forget exactly how she said it, but don't tell me what I can't do. And I really love how, and this is a theme, and I know Rachel was saying earlier this week in the thing there that the entire book feels like a bunch of people complaining. And there's a reason for that, because it's to illustrate the circular logic, I'm going to guess, of the antagonists, because they try to speak you to death. It's like interviewing a politician, and they ask you, well, what color's green? Well, let me tell you, the problem isn't what color green is. problem is that Justin Trudeau hasn't been looking after the widows and the orphans. And this is what, like that's how they answer. And they round and round and round we go. And so Dagny just keeps beating at him with honesty and with truth. And eventually she says, well, it's fine. As long as you let people have a choice, we'll see what happens. And we see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So she wakes up the next morning, or she gets up, and there is how many people waiting in the office ready to take on any and all of them?
All of them. Like 100.
All of them. I think it's everybody.
Almost everybody by ballot or in person.
She makes a very specific thing to say 3 of them couldn't make it.
Yeah.
One was out of the country, one was in the hospital, or something along those lines. I'm like,
He said they got letters from all of them, and as many as could come in were in the office personally.
Which was awesome. So they draw lots to see who can do it. And, well, I guess apparently the union didn't have as much clout as they thought they did, because they were more than happy to drive the train. I have a question for anybody who may or may, I don't know if anybody knows trains, but are there any trains in the continental U.S. that go at 100 miles an hour?
Oh, yeah.
Are there?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think we'd have any here, would we, Sandy?
I don't know.
I mean, I have, when every so often there's a certain highway here that runs right along the train tracks. And when the trains are going full tilt, I'll just clock my speed at them to see what it is. And usually 80 to 90 kilometers an hour. And if Chris Dixon's still in here this evening, he might know the answer to this. I don't know how fast they go, but yeah, go ahead.
The trains that are out in front of our house. So Tim, you know how close those tracks are to us?
Sure do. Yeah.
They're 2 blocks away from my house.
Yeah.
Full tilt. They're going through here at 72 miles an hour.
Wow.
Wow.
Right through it. Yeah. Holy cow. Okay.
And that's on a curve too.
Right.
So
now there is some, I was kind of excited about this. Recently, they talked about a private company who is just getting ready to run tests. They want to do a high-speed train between Calgary and Edmonton, which is a 3-hour drive. And I think they're going to be able to do it in about 40 minutes. It's going to be insanely fast. So I'm good with that, but it must have blown them out of the water. There wouldn't have been any trains going near 100 miles an hour back then, would there? Or yeah.
No, I don't think there would be. I mean, not that time period.
No, and I loved when they're like, well, are you going to go a little slower? She goes, no, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go 100 miles an hour, and you guys are going to like it. She's like, well, if I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory, I think I'll go out in a blaze of glory. So,
yep.
Because she, I mean, it kind of implied that they barely even touched the bridge as they crossed it, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The actual train ride was rather anticlimactic, is what I was thinking, because she's like, well, we want to enjoy it, but it's 100 miles an hour. They can't see anything. They bounce across bridges and then they're there. It's like, oh, okay, we're good.
Yeah. The only thing they see is all the people standing along the track. Every 2 miles they say?
I think it's every mile marker, whatever they were.
Every mile marker. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
The honor guard.
Yep.
Yes. And then occasionally there was fireworks in the cities,
Mm-hmm.
people letting off rockets and things, which I thought was kind of cool. And so they land in Colorado. And I think I really enjoy, because he's talking about the being able to pull the oil out of the shale. So this is 70 years ago that he says, hey, we can't, most people have convinced themselves that we can't get oil out of the shale anymore. And that mirrors what happened, in the last 15 years or so, the shale oil revolution. Because, I mean, if anybody, for anybody who's a little bit younger than us, there was a time when they claimed that we were going to run out of oil. So,
again,
I know. But I do remember when we switched from plastic to paper, or paper to plastic, to save the environment too. So there we are. So yeah, but yeah, they really were. And I thought it was neat that here we are 70 years later, and it's still something people say, oh, we'll never get the oil out of there. And then they figure out a new way to frack things. And guess what? There was another oil revolution. Boom and bust, boom and bust.
Hey Tim, that paper to plastic and then back to plastic to paper.
Yes.
That has real 1984 feelings to it, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. You, sir, will eat your food with your paper spoon, and you will like it because it is the strongest spoon we have ever had. We've never had any weaker spoons ever. I went to Tim Hortons the other day to get a chili, and it was a cardboard spoon.
So, all right. So our girls get these little tiny eggs. I don't remember what they're called, but they had it's got like a little plastic spoon in it.
Okay.
And within the past 2 weeks, they've changed it to a cardboard spoon.
Of course they have.
The youngest is flipping a shit because she can't.
Nate, next time you come home, just say, "Listen, sweetie, you're misremembering. It's always been cardboard."
Yeah. So I go grab a handful of these, and I get 4 of them, and I each give them 2. Well, the oldest gets one with a plastic spoon in it, and the youngest gets all the paper spoons again.
Oh. Well, I can tell you is if I stop for a fountain drink before I leave Lloydminster when I'm at the daycare, so it's an hour and 10 minutes. If I don't finish that drink by the time I get home, I can't pull anything through that straw anymore. It has pinched off. Oh, anyway.
There's a reason why John makes a straw pouch from SOE.
Oh, 100%. Yes. I don't know why, like I said, they've always been cardboard, so I shouldn't complain. We never.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're not toxic either.
No, yeah. Oh, I know. Well, the cool thing is you can eat your spoon when you're done. I mean,
Fiber.
Tim, I use reusable shopping bags when I go to the grocery store. Why not just carry your own straw with you? I mean,
oh, hey, no problem. I buy those reusable shopping bags every time I go to the grocery store too, because I forget them in my truck.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't buy them, but I don't technically go in the grocery store if I can help it. I just go by and let them. I order my groceries and I order them without bags so they can come out and bag them in the back of my car and then I can take them home.
Good thinking.
Yeah, we do Instant Cart too with Aldi, and we order, and you don't get bags from Aldi, so they just bring it all in boxes.
Sumi says, but while they demonize the plastic, nobody says anything about the coating on the paper straws, other than the fact that there's microplastics in literally everything at this point, and
or the fact that the paper straws are in plastic.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah. Oh boy, we've been all over tonight already. So they meet. We get to meet Ellis Wyatt, this is really the first time that we kind of get to peek behind the curtain of him, because he's been kind of this stoic, hard ass kind of, business guy from what we've seen so far. They show up there and they're like, "Oh, this is interesting." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't get to show the real me very often," because he was really excited. He was happy that they succeeded. Where do we go from here? However, there's a little bit of foreshadowing because a shadow passes over his face, and then he slams his glass against the window or against the wall. Did anybody catch that? I mean, I'm sure you did, but I was over on the track this morning running, and I was listening to it then, and I thought, that's odd. What's going on? And then, of course, I assume, Sandy, that it's, again, foreshadowing that he's pessimistic, or
he's farther on the journey of realization than they are.
Right.
You see people at different stages of realizing the world has gone to hell and that they can't succeed in it. And I think he has glimpses of that. So he celebrates the win with the railroad, but he still says, okay, he knows something else is going to happen down the road, and this is not going to stay.
So you think he's slightly further along in his journey than Dagny or Hank?
Yes, in that respect, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
The other thing, did you catch when Oren Boyle said thank you for the slap in the face?
I did, and I explained, because I kind of missed what that was talking about.
Oren Boyle shows up in her office and says, "You have 9 months to get this rail done for me, or I'll go find somebody else."
Yeah, I remember that.
Your company will sink. So in 9 months, thank you for the slap in the face.
Oh no, that was Wyatt though.
Was it Wyatt?
Or yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
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 Wyatt.
No, he thanks her for the most beautiful slap in the face.
Yes,
here.
the most beautiful slap. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Names.
So in other words,
Oren Boyle is Associated Steel.
Yes. So it was the oil guy.
Yeah.
Shows up at her thing, and then or Alice Wyatt shows up in her office and says, "You have 9 months to get this rail done, or you're screwed." And thank you for the slap in the face when the railroad is running.
In other words, he was never happier to be wrong. Was that the idea?
Yes,
exactly.
Okay, perfect. That's where I kind of took it, and I wanted to make sure we were right. So, well, at that moment, we finally have, of course, and this is, well, anyway, I assume this maybe reflects a little bit of Ayn Rand's internal struggles, maybe, of being able to reconcile love with her philosophy, because it exists, but you know, in everything that she talks about, it's a transaction. You have to give and take. There's never, you know, what does she say? Altruism doesn't exist or whatever. So, but at the same time, it's pretty hard to deny the fact that all humans have a desire to partner off or find someone that makes them whole, right? So this is a kind of an interesting way of her to reconcile both those things, because I think a lot of people who, I don't know if you guys catch this, and maybe you don't watch as much popular media or culture as I do, but Ayn Rand seems to be a bit of a punching bag in the Hollywood left. Every so often they talk about her. I know, a lot. Yeah. I was even watching a bag. Yeah. So because they look at her as a contradiction, or a somebody who contradicts herself, or maybe more of an absolutist who couldn't exist in real life, you know. So does anybody want to kind of comment on the scene with Dagny and Hank at all? What do you think, Sandy?
Well,
not to put you on the spot.
No, it is interesting because I don't want to give things away from later on when Hank does have his realization, but he feels that Dagny is above all that. Like, he's really got her on a pedestal.
Sure.
And he wants her, but he's conflicted because he can't reconcile her wanting him the same way. So he figures that he kind of has sort of cursed his own desires, really. So Dagny does not have that problem. Like, right. She's like, that way she's more comfortable in herself. Like, she says, this is a good thing, right? And for her, and for Ayn Rand too, like, kind of her essence of sort of love sex is kind of more like the hero worship. So for Dagny, it has to, like, for her, like, that has to be with somebody that's she can look up to, like, right. Not just, any old, and same thing for Francisco as well. Yeah, exactly. Yes. And she's a little bit complicated that way, maybe, shall we say, but
sure. Because, again, and I've said this quote many times, but one of my professors from university, he just retired or went on to a new job. He always said, again, that your actions and your beliefs could never be contradictory, and if they didn't line up, eventually you'd have to change one or the other. And I think this is one of the areas where Randian philosophy gets a little, maybe not flexible, but and I'm not even going to say she takes artistic liberties, but I think she has to maybe jump through a few more hoops, or at least to make the idea of sex and love tie in to the transactional nature of her philosophy. Yeah. There's a lot of big words that I didn't mean to tie together there, guys. Sorry. But so
well, I can't value for value, though.
Sorry, Sandy.
It is sort of a value for value, though, too, because they're both equally great people.
That is very true.
Like, it's not like, say her and Oren Boyle.
And you know what? Maybe
you would not see that.
Maybe that's a reflection on the reader, or myself, even, that is one of the hardest ones to look at transactionally. It's really easy to look at business and employee-employer relationships transactionally, but it's pretty hard to look at love and marriage and relationships, even though I think deep down inside we can agree they are. It's it's a difficult thing to wrap your mind around, I guess.
It is true.
So I'm going to bring up another thing here, and I can't take credit for this. I'd love to just gloss over and say this was my own catch, but it wasn't. So when I was putting together the notes again, in the Cliff's notes, there was a really cool observation. So at the end of chapter 8, the beginning of chapter 9, we have Dagny and Hank falling in love. They have, I guess, what Ayn Rand would consider a pure transactional relationship, her idea of love, or at least, Then we have Dagny's brother, who falls in love with, or no, sorry, he doesn't fall in love with, but this, was it a drugstore girl or yeah. She's basically infatuated with him, and it's the opposite hero worship. It's the negative. He likes it simply because she likes him based on all these false assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And
him thinking he's Dagny, though.
Right, exactly. So
he thinks he's done,
all of those good things, right? So she takes, again, she very quickly takes and she shows, all right, here is the ideal relationship or the positive relationship, and then here is the complete opposite of that. This is what looters would have, or whatever you want to call it, for a relationship. And I like that. I wasn't on the ball enough to catch that myself, so I'm not going to take credit for it, but it was, Go ahead, Nate.
No, it's fine. I don't want to ruin anything.
I know. And Bonnie Blue says, I don't think it's hard at all. I think talking about the transactional nature of relationships. And I think you're right. Everybody has a sacred cow, you know what I mean? And that you have to butcher or, slaughter or whatever. So All right. So where do we, all right, we got Reardon doesn't realize, so I wrote this part down about Reardon. Do you think Reardon knows that he can't trust Paul Larkin, or do you think he just doesn't care?
I don't think he cares.
Okay, just it doesn't matter to him.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sandy?
Yeah, he definitely knows, because he knows he's not one of the honorable characters who's earned what he has.
Yeah.
So it's either do it or don't do it. Just don't tell me.
When we go way back to that original, very awkward, very uncomfortable interaction with Hank and his family, his mother, his wife, and his brother, was Paul in town for that first secret meeting, and that's why he was there? Or was it just one of those things? Or am I trying to grasp at straws, paper straws?
It was a dinner party that Hank missed, that he come in afterwards.
Okay.
Because remember, as one of his mom's friends was there that wanted to meet him, and she was disappointed because he didn't make it for dinner. And
so we've been making pretty good time here so far. So I think there was another thing I didn't mention that comes in this chapter, or one of these chapters, and it is Hank's mother showing up at Hank's office. Oh boy, she's a piece of work. She was one. Oh my God, I was getting so mad. I was driving home from Lloyd from the other daycare. I'm listening to her talk, and I just want to reach through whatever. There's nothing that exists, and just punch her. I'm like, the circular reasoning and logic that people have, and I know it's easy to judge looking back, but she says something along the lines of, your brother, he needs a purpose. He needs a job so that he can have money that's his.
But a nice, clean job.
Yes, but he's not qualified to do the goddamn job.
Right. What did he say? Hank says, I wouldn't hire him to sweep my chimneys or clean my chimneys.
Yeah, I wouldn't hire him as a chimney sweep.
Yeah.
So, Tim, that's no different than the discussion between the young man working on the conveyor belt and I can't remember the character that he was talking to. It was one of the main Moocher characters too, and he's telling the young boy, well, he's like, I've had seniority out there. Somebody else shouldn't be able to just come in and basically take my business, but then there's got to be room for other people to to be able to make a living too. It's like, which way are you going to have it, you idiot?
I was out working in the backyard today, listening to that, and he's like, well, they're neat. What does he say? They're in the same breath. He says something along the lines of, we need to have what is it? Open markets or free markets, so there's fair competition.
Yeah.
But then at the next line, he basically is in favor of the anti-dog eat dog. You know, like it
doesn't want competition. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. He's like, we need fair competition. And that, I go off on a bit of a tangent here, but that is very much a reflection of modern society as well. It's
what I hear.
Go ahead,
what
John.
I heard when he was talking was, look, I'm not good enough to beat the other people that I'm competing with, so I need laws that evens the playing field so that I don't have to beat them fairly.
What I heard there was a bit of the modern environmental thing again.
Oh gosh, don't get me started. I just heard tonight about these new big plants that they're building in places like Wyoming and Texas that are actually going to draw carbon out of the air, and then they're going to put it down in the water aquifers. And it's not going to produce anything. So what they're going to do is they're going to be amassing these carbon credits. Now they're going to have to pay carbon credits because evidently these big plants are going to suck up a lot of energy to be able to do this. But the way that they're going to be able to make them profitable is, of course, they're going to sell all the extra carbon credits that they're producing by cleaning up the air to other businesses and stuff. And I'm thinking, hey, I'm just my brain is on fire.
Isn't that what Bernie Madoff did? Didn't he do something very similar? If anybody remembers Bernie Madoff with the Ponzi schemes, you know. But so okay, I guess what I wanted to the point I wanted to make was that the other night in the show, I talked about how the carbon footprint of anything has become the measuring stick that everybody uses. But the problem is that whomever you talk to about something, so the person who's getting mad at you, you'll say, well, yeah, but you have an iPhone. That's made out of petroleum products and all this. So like, no, you don't understand. I need that iPhone to feed my family and to communicate. But then they get mad at Taylor Swift for driving a private jet, whatever. I'm using that as an example. So it always comes back to whatever I do is perfectly fine, but I'm 100% okay with judging everyone else.
Oh yeah.
And that, yeah, go ahead, Nate.
iPhone right here. I have one. All right. The minerals to make the battery are done by slave labor.
Sure they are.
Everybody knows this. I hope everybody knows this. It's slave labor.
I don't know that everybody knows it.
Okay.
We do.
Has anybody ever seen the factory where these are built?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I've never been to China.
The factory is in China. Do you know what surrounds the factory in China?
Nets.
Nets. You know why there are nets around the building. So when people jump off the building and want to commit suicide, they don't die.
I heard recently that they apparently hand out chewable meth as well. I don't know if
possibly.
Yeah.
You have all these social justice warriors bitching about this while using this product.
Oh yeah.
And I'm okay if you know it. You know what I mean? Like I just don't want contradictions. And to me, when it comes down to it, is anarchism is really the only thing that lacks contradiction, because when it comes, I mean, you still have, the non-aggression principle, but beyond that, people can do what they want and it doesn't matter, anyway, frustrating. See, you guys got me all worked up tonight. It's a good night. So Jim Taggart, he meets the innocent shop girl and she's starstruck for him or starstruck by him or whatever you want, basically a worshiper. And I wish I'd have written the line down, but I was busy while I was listening to it. He says, so you follow the newspapers or something along those lines, or you believe, in other words, what was implied was you believe what's in the newspapers. And she says something along the lines of, well, of course I do. Why wouldn't I? And I thought, if that's also not a really good reflection of what goes on today.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. What do you think, Byron?
Oh, yeah. It's just like, anything you see printed or on or on Facebook. The media put it out. It's true.
And
I'm going to worship that person for doing whatever they did, even though it's not true.
And I'm going to step on some toes here too, because we as preppers do the exact same thing. Because there are news stories quite often that make the circles within our circles that everybody just accept as gospel again, and whatever it happens to be. You can pick whichever one it is. One of my favorites was Alex Jones last year saying that lockdowns are coming again in September, and everybody believed it. Well, guess what? September came and went. What's that?
Y2K. I mean,
absolutely. Wherever you stand on it, I mean, there's lots of things, and so
gay,
yes, making the damn frogs gay. Yeah, you know how it is. So yeah, they're just anyway.
Gay frogs. Damn it.
Hey, that was the only thing Alex Jones got wrong.
So we find out that Wesley Mouch has thrown Hank, or he's basically said, "Frig you, Hank, I'm leaving."
Yep.
And there's a throwaway line or a newspaper article that basically says, "Oh, by the way, Wesley Mouch has now taken a very cushy position within the government." And if he's not an example of a career politician, you can look at Joe Biden, for instance.
Yep.
In this instance, somebody who has cut their teeth at the public teat the entire time and really has done nothing else. So I wrote this question down in all caps here, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. So in today's, kind of 24-hour news cycle, social media, everything, is it easier or is it harder for this political good old boys club to get people into positions like that, you guys think?
It's easier because you have the media doing it for you.
Yeah.
They're all owned by the same people.
Yep. Two cheeks from the same ass.
Mm-hmm.
I like
money
that.
talks and bullshit walks.
That's true. Or it runs downhill.
Yeah, it's easier.
I'm sure at least a couple of y'all listened to Spirko enough to have heard his story about when he tried to run for office down there in Texas, and that guy come up and put his hand on his shoulder and said, "If you really want that office, just change to Republican and give me a call, and we'll put you in that position." And it's like it wasn't a question or we'll try. It's we'll give you that office. And I remember Jack talking about he needed to go home and take a shower because he felt so dirty.
Yeah,
that's true. Even there and probably even here.
I have no doubt, and I'm sure it still happens. Go ahead, Byron. Sorry,
my dumbass wants to run for the local school board.
Okay,
but you're not going to get elected if you're independent,
right? So most of you know this. About 2 years ago, I ran for city council here, town council. I don't know. I know. Shut up, Nate. I want to share something with you guys that I just realized the other day. So it would have been a 4-year term. So I would have been about halfway through the 4-year term at this point, maybe 3/4. I'm not sure. The main reason I did it was that we had there's a couple here who we're friends with. They wanted me because they wanted someone else on there that was kind of like-minded to, join in with them, right? Well, he took a job in another town recently. She resigned from city council and they moved away. So if I'd ended up getting on there, I'd have been there all by myself. So there you go. Isn't that funny?
I mean, it's the easiest way to look at it is anybody who becomes president, all of a sudden, all their friends are running in the cabinet. All their friends get appointed to these positions, and they are not run through the Senate. So, I mean, it's not hard. You look at who we got now.
It's the same way as the governor, because the governor here was just reelected. I have a few friends that are in appointed positions. They're like, "Oh shit, I don't know if I'm getting, if they're going to keep their position or not." I mean.
So we move on from there. And this was actually kind of one of I really enjoy this scene, and I'm not exactly sure why. But when Hank looks at Dagny and he says, when's the last time you were on a vacation? She goes, 3 years ago. It was supposed to be a month, and I come back after 5 days or something. And Hank's like, yeah, it was 5 years ago for me, and I did the same thing. There is, and I know for anybody out there who's read this book, you know exactly what Ayn Rand is doing at this moment. And she's making everything. Okay, let's go back a little bit. When you're watching TV, something like The Walking Dead, all of a sudden, if something kind of comes a little bit out of left field, or all of a sudden they spend 10 minutes paying attention to a secondary character that you haven't really paid attention to, all of a sudden, maybe they give them some emotional stakes. They're like, oh, all of a sudden this background character just got themselves a girlfriend. Well, guess what's going to happen? There's a really good chance that background character is getting offed in this episode. They're going to get chewed up by a zombie. Right. That is one of the cheapest, narrative tricks out there is, all right, we haven't talked about this person. Let's give them a little bit of
just get you interested.
Just to get you interested so we can cut them off. So for those who don't know, this is probably a bit of what's going on here. But I really love Dagny and Hank just taking off, going off in the countryside and exploring. And when she looks at, and when he looks at her and he goes, are we really not working at all? And she just says, all right, what plant do you want to go see? That reminds me of Becky and I through and through. When we're traveling, it's like, do we really need to go this far tonight? Like, can we stop and see the world's largest ball of twine? Like, I'd really like to see that, honey, I'm going to bet, Sandy, that your significant other might be slightly like that too. Is he?
Yes, he definitely plans a lot more than I do, though. Let's see, let's see what comes up. And he's more, let's have everything planned.
Yeah. So Nate, I want you, because I know this is one of your passions or interests for sure. Talk a little bit about what they find when they decide to go wandering around in this old abandoned or nearly abandoned warehouse factory.
So I did not get this far this time because I ran out of time today because everybody was bothering me at work. But I was able to get right up to the point where they got to Wisconsin. I know they find the motor factory. And they find this, they go rooting through it, and they find this. I don't know how big this thing is.
I wonder that myself. It seems like it's a fairly imposing.
Yeah, it seems pretty big. Yeah. I mean, it's
but it's in a vault, and it sounds like she can have it in her hands.
Oh, really? Okay.
So, because it was like underneath some rubble, and it sounded like she picked it up. And
did they know immediately what it was that they had? Does anybody know? What do you think?
She
Sandy?
did.
Okay, go ahead, John.
She did because she recognized it from reading about it in the past.
So
he didn't know until he read the notes about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, Mr. Tesla, Nate, why don't you tell us a little bit about what this engine is supposed to be able to do?
So it's supposed to harness energy. It's static electricity, if I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's supposed to draw static electricity out of thin air.
Yes. Now, in theory, it could work. And I think somebody has kind of proven that it can work.
That was Tesla, right? Back in the day? Was that the idea?
Tesla was one of them. But I think somebody recently has come up with a working model of it.
Really?
Are they still alive?
For now.
I don't know, because it was like 6 months ago I found this.
They're hanging around in jail right now. So.
Yes. They may be hanging from somewhere.
Right.
Or maybe all their documents disappeared as well. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
their next door sales Epstein.
This static motor reminds me a little bit of a few years ago when there was a Kickstarter where a guy shows he had and this may not be the one you're thinking of, Nate, but it was something he put in his mouth, and he was supposedly able to, it was a rebreather. It was supposed to filter the oxygen.
Yeah.
It didn't really work because the amount of oxygen that was in there, at that scale wouldn't. If they went larger, maybe. But that's what this kind of gives me the vibes of. And I know that's not where it's coming from, but it's a pretty interesting concept, wouldn't you say, Nate?
Yeah, I think if I remember, I think this thing is called a perpetual motor.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
Is what it is, and I think somebody's got one.
Oh, this big.
Go ahead, John.
So what it really makes me think is, like, if you really wrap your head around how much stuff that surrounds us that are just a little bit off of being so different. Take water, for instance. What makes up water? It's H2O. You know, hydrogen is very, very flammable, but if you put too much oxygen with it, and it's water now. And yeah, you can break it down. It's just like anything that's petroleum based, any kind of plastic, anything at all that's petroleum based. If you run the right microwave frequency through it, it'll revert right back to crude oil. And it's just you stop and think about it, that with everything that's around us being just molecules away from being something completely different. It's just mind-boggling at how close we are to inventions that we can't even fathom.
Is it bedtime, Nate, for your kiddos?
Yeah, give me a few minutes and I'll be right back. Maybe like 10, 15 minutes, and I will be back. All right?
See you in a bit. If we're still here anyway. But yeah, it's fine. So... All right, so we're actually kind of getting close again to this. Is what happens for Nate every time it's bedtime, and we're getting close to the end of it. So,
kids,
if I'd have thought about it, I probably would have made tonight's episode 4 chapters, so that we could have ended on part 1. But Nate and I did the math ages ago, and we're like, well, if we split it equally, we can do 3 chapters per, and we'll be good. But whatever.
What's it, August next year? Is that what it is?
I think so. Yeah. And for those out there too, we haven't mentioned it in a little while, but anybody who lets us know at the end of all of this that you read the book along with us, we're going to have a special patch for everybody who read the book. So I know Sandy will like that. So, but we know the big thing that we know that the motor, it's not super implied, but it's somewhat implied that's going to play a rather large part in the plot coming up, isn't it, Sandy?
It is.
What? All right. So what can we, it's hard because I think everybody here has read this before. Obviously Sandy has. Byron, you have, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's been 13 years.
And John, you have too, right?
Yeah, I went all the way through it right after we decided that we was going to go through it as the book club about a year ago.
So it's hard to ask people to make predictions as to where the book's going to go because we already know. So,
I've got a prediction.
Go ahead, John.
No, it would be a total spoiler.
Yeah, sure. Were you going to say something, Sandy?
Oh, I said I'll bring Samantha on. She hasn't read it yet.
Oh, yes.
She's just reading on for the first time.
Is she there? Does she want to come on? I would love her. Hey, you. So you finished reading up to chapter 9 so far?
Yep.
What do you think? Where do you see? Okay, you know what? Can I pick your brain for a couple minutes? Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'll hear your take on it.
So
I don't really have any major predictions, but
that's okay. What are the head scratchers for you so far? What in the book have you been like you'd really like to know an answer to? Something that hasn't made sense yet. Is there anything in there?
What's the deal with Francisco d'Anconia? Like, what's he doing? There's also talk of this pirate. He hasn't really shown up. I may have heard some things that he plays more of a role later on, but I don't know. So.
Those are the things.
Ragnar Danaskill.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's fun because so recently I've been watching. So my daughters and I watched Dazed and Confused the other night. Has anybody seen that movie?
Oh, love it.
It is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, mine too. I can watch it anytime.
And so I've been recently introducing Charlotte and Alice into some of these movies. And it's so much fun because it's almost like getting to watch the movie for the first time again.
Oh, it is.
Because you're watching it through their eyes, and then afterwards we get to talk about it. So that's why I love chatting with people who are reading this for the first time, because you forget. I forget even.
Oh yeah, I forgot a lot of stuff since rereading it. And hell, it's been right at 12 years, really 13 years. It's like rereading it again. I mean,
so speaking of Francisco and speaking of Ragnar Danaskul, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
When you go back to Dagny's conversation with the scientist guy, and he talks about 3 students, 2 of which, am I right in this, were Francisco and Danaskul? Yep. Okay. So
there's the mystery third one as well, actually.
Yes, the third one who, according to the plot at this point, did nothing with their life. They just disappeared, and they're probably working the third shift at the Ford factory, putting headlights into a box,
I
or
was like
maybe not.
Librarian's assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just based that on somebody I used to know in real life. So
yeah.
So here's something that we all need to remember is that I don't believe there's a wasted line of dialogue in Ayn Rand's book anywhere. There's no throwaway plot points. There's nothing that just kind of, or very few that just kind of peter out and don't mean anything. So I guess what I'm saying is that third person probably will come back around to maybe make an appearance. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just forgot to mention at the time, but that is a very good point.
So what do you think? I'd like to hear your thoughts, if you don't mind, on Francisco and what you think is up with him, because I remember being absolutely twisted in the head, not knowing what was going on. If you had to make a guess or something.
I don't know.
Is he a good guy or a bad guy?
I think he's an interesting character, and even though he's kind of not working against Dagny, but not really helping with the whole thing, I think he's just kind of given up and trying to bring the ship down. Bring everything down with them.
Watch the world burn, hey?
Yeah, watch the world burn.
Accelerationist.
And drag all the looters down with them. That's exactly what he did with his copper mine. All
That's a very astute observation.
Pile in on him and make money. They all lost money because they invested in his mine, and
that's really good. I'm impressed. I like that. That's a really good observation. So I guess one more question here as we kind of wrap up is, and maybe we've talked about this a little bit before, but would we consider Dagny, would any of us consider Dagny as the main protagonist of the book? Or
yes,
I think so.
Okay. Yeah. So even more than Hank, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything's through her perspective, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
More?
Yeah.
Like they go into backstories.
Yeah, to me, Hank's more secondary.
Yeah.
That's true.
He's like the co-star, not the main star,
Then at this point, who would we consider the main antagonist?
No. It's not if there is a main antagonist. Mostly
is it just society?
Every new bill.
Society, yeah.
Seems every new bill is a new antagonist to fight over almost.
But they're not really worthy though. Like
I guess you're right. There are it seems like roadblocks almost.
Yes.
Every time they
it's like they're really just plot contrivances for the for the protagonist to overcome. Is that what we're kind of looking at? They're just another rock in the road to climb over or throw out of the way.
But there's the essence of evil there too, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I would say
the hatred of the good for being good. Like that's sort of a recurring theme in the book too.
Capitalists, even though they're the one that's delivering all your goods and keeping your lights on.
Do you think that
awful and greedy?
Would in Ayn Rand's philosophy, would apathy be the worst sin? Just not caring, not doing? Or would she look higher on somebody who does? Well, see, I want to say for their own personal gain, but that's really her ultimate belief anyway, isn't it? That everybody does everything for personal gain. So would the opposite of, because the bad guys in the book, or the folks that are looked down upon, are called moochers, right? They take without doing.
Yeah.
So is it production and apathy? Is that kind of what? I don't know. What do you think, Sandy? Because how many times have you read this book?
I lost count, but I haven't read it for the last while though, so I'm just rereading after a good pause.
You told me a story about the book and how I believe it ties into how you and Jeff met way back when. Is that right?
No, it was after we were married, but yeah.
Okay.
We
you guys used to go to a book club or something, was that right?
Yes, actually, we're interested in the book, and so somebody put us in contact with sort of very clever lady who's really into objectivism and like the philosophy of Ayn Rand, and she had a little group that we used to go and discuss ideas with. She was very much further along philosophically than any of us were, but it was still
nice.
Really
You'd have liked her.
Was she like a former college professor or anything, or was she just somebody? Was she a former college professor or anything, or was she just interested in the philosophy?
No, she was. Actually, I'm trying to remember.
Well,
they were business
bookstore.
people. Yeah, she ran a bookstore. They're pretty much business people. Her husband ran like a woodworking and tools and that, and so which a
couple that Ayn Rand would have thought very highly of, right?
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
So, well, she actually did meet Ayn Rand a few times too. So
They went to conferences.
Yeah.
In New York.
I have this crazy idea. I'm going to throw it out there. I would love to sit down and edit. That maybe this sounds kind of corny, but take some of her best answers to some of her questions and do like a mock interview, so that some people in our community could be introduced to some of the stuff that she believes, because she was a smart lady. Oh,
she was.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting, actually. Too.
Way before time.
I I've seen it done with a few people. There's a guy I watch that is he kind of like tears down mentalists and things like that, people, and he does animated interviews where he basically asks the questions to folks who have long passed away. And it's a pretty interesting, it's kind of neat. I don't know, but I would, yeah, it would be kind of cool. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll try it. So what do you think, Nate? I know I can't ask you for predictions going forward, but one question I did ask everyone was, is the opposite of objectivism, or would the worst character trait be apathy, just not caring, not producing? Is that kind of the antithesis to what Rand said? What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a lot of somebody needs to do something, and we don't know what it is, and just gotta. Yeah, I mean that's really just kind of the antithesis of the entire book. Is we want to do all this, but we don't know how. Somebody else needs to do it, but the other people,
someone else needs to do it, right? There.
Someone else needs to do it for us.
Somebody else needs to do it, and we need to take away everything we can from certain people because they're not doing enough.
Right. Yeah. So true. That was when we were talking just a little while ago, when we were talking about the contradictions between the young fellow who's like, I really want to take over my dad's business, but they moved it, and we need competition, but we need government intervention. And when it comes down to it, that's kind of that idea. Somebody needs to do something. And then
there ought to be a law.
Yeah. There ought to be a law. Somebody ought to do something. And then they kind of look at him like, well, what are you going to do? But, I couldn't do anything. I can't do anything. What would happen if, Hank and Dagny said, well, I can't do it. Things would have fell apart a lot quicker, wouldn't they?
There's a lot of people that are starting to say, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Both seeing that in real life.
I think that's where Nate's going. And maybe this is a good place to tie it up is, where did all of the employees go? Because there's still a shit ton of people who never went back into the workforce. So where I don't know. I don't know where it ends. Badly, I'm guessing, but
because we're seeing societal collapse in the book too, which is kind of interesting as well. Sort of a little bit parallel.
Absolutely, a slow moving train wreck, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Well, and one of the things I know you guys didn't catch on, and I want to say it real quick. When Dagny's talking to Stadler, you hear about the 3 students.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And one of them is Francisco. The other one is
Ragnar Dennis
Ragnar Daniskold. And the third one is, they don't say his name, but he probably ended up as some clerk somewhere.
You just missed it. We
A
did
third assistant, a
Okay.
third assistant, something for a bookkeeper or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I want to share this comment here from Hunter. He says, I read this book once a year and then Extreme Ownership. Has anyone else read that book? Because I have not.
No.
I haven't.
I'm always looking for good recommendations. So.
Yeah, me too.
Anything else anybody wanted to cover that I may have brushed over that we didn't? Any plot points or philosophical caveats that you'd like to go down rabbit hole with?
I'll find the video on that motor I was talking about, and I'll post it in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, there's one other little bit too that's kind of neat.
Yes.
Is when she's in her office and the John Galt of the John Galt line, and then there's that figure outside the door that looks like it wants to come in and is not going, and she's thinking of kind of somebody she hasn't met yet. I think that is a kind of a nice little, perhaps foreshadowing, but also a little kind of mystery to the book too.
And it's important enough that she revisits it, something that Ayn Rand doesn't do very often. We remember, Nate, I think we talked about this in the last episode, is she rarely repeats herself, even though people think she does. But the fact that she brings it up, I think it's the first night that her and Hank are together. And she says, Hank, was it you outside of my office that time? Like, that's such a random thing. To, that's
well, and Eddie, if I remember, Eddie, I think talks to the worker again, and he says, I haven't seen you in a long time. What's going on? So,
are we sure that worker is even the same? We don't know. I mean, I love it. Yeah. I wish somebody would make a movie of this, a really good, or a mini series.
One.
Yeah.
They did make a movie and it is shit.
I heard that. Yes.
I've never watched it.
No.
It is shit.
Well, guys, we
have to watch it.
Good.
We made 90 minutes, and we didn't even have to struggle to make an hour and a half this evening. But I don't know. What do you? Okay, let's put it this way. Even though you know where the book is going, what are you most excited to see happen in this book next, Nate? What do you enjoy? What are you looking forward to the resolution of? Put you right on the spot. I apologize, brother.
Well, I'm trying not to give anything away, and I'm trying to think about what's the one thing I love, like my favorite thing.
Is it the engine?
It's the engine, or when Ragnar shows his face.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. How about you, Sandy? Without spoiling, what are the things you enjoy finding out as we go along?
That's really difficult without revealing things.
Yeah.
What do you think, Byron?
I'm gonna just say the engine. Just because of the time frame it's in. I mean, just kind of.
How about you, Jeff?
What about you, John Palmer? Oh, he's.
Man, I like this. That is so hard to. It's so hard to talk about without spoiling it for me.
Well, I know the one. If there's one question that I would love to know the answer to as we go along, and it's probably a great place to end this show with, but I'd love to know the answer to who is John Galt.
Yes.
Sorry, guys, I couldn't resist.
That's funny.
You find out coming up pretty soon.
Yes. Yep. Tune in next month for the next segment of So there is. I'm just gonna one more thing. There's one speech that is how long, Nate? Do we
3
know?
hours.
3 hours, roughly.
Yes.
Yeah. And is that that is 1 or 2 chapters?
Well, no, there's All right, so there's 2 speeches given by 2 different people.
Right. So
one of them is like 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is like 3 freaking hours long.
So Rachel Brown, if you're still in here, if you thought that the bitching and complaining happens a lot, wait till we get to this speech. It's not a bitching and complaining speech, but it is a long speech. And I would not suggest anyone take it all in at once, because I remember coming back from Tennessee last year with Becky, listening to that, and maybe 45 minutes is about all I could do before.
Let me look up how long it is.
All right.
You have to digest it too, though, because there's a lot of ideas in there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I listened to it all in one shot. I was on my way out to one day, just the way it worked out.
It's like trying to watch 2 or 3 movies back to back that are all subtitled. Eventually your brain is like, I can't take it in anymore, because like you said, Sandy, there is so much philosophy and belief in that speech that it just gets, it becomes difficult for sure. Go ahead, Nate.
I'm still looking it up.
Sorry, thought you were waiting patiently on me.
No.
Rachel Brown says, you're killing me, Smalls. Well, not quite. I paraphrased, of course, but she said, you guys are killing me here. So while Nate's looking up the length of the speech, I'll fill people in on what's coming up. So the next, I think we're gonna stick probably toward the middle of March, because that'll be just before I head south for Tennessee. And we're going to be doing chapter 10, 11, and 12. So that takes us into 2 chapters into part 2. So that'll be it'll be neat. We're a third the way there, Nate. We're doing okay.
Yep. All right. I don't see the length of it, but there is one great quote in that speech, and I will hold off on saying that, because boy, howdy.
I was going to see, I might be able to find it here on Audible, but I'm not sure. Let me look real quick, and we'll see if we can find what the...
I can post the entire speech, but I got a link of it, but it doesn't give a time.
4 hours and 6 minutes, according to my phone so it's in there.
Yeah.
And we won't even give away the title of it. So with that, folks, is there anything, I guess, Nate, you're the only one that has something to plug, aren't you, brother?
Nope. You can find me at, me and my wife, Erin, at twochickshomestead.com, or in any of the groups we're usually poking around. So
where do people find you, Sandy? You're in Telegram a little bit, aren't you?
I'm in Telegram a bit, but not as active as I should be.
Don't ever feel, real life takes precedence over electronic every day of the week. So it's good to have you in here, and I hope you come back, because you're an asset. You help balance out the testosterone as well. So that's good. Yes. And Byron, you'll be back, I suppose.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and folks want to find you. It's normally Telegram as well.
Telegram, and my Jeep Instagram is foolishhabit_LJ. So
nice.
I'm still undecided how I'm going to do it. I need to have a chat with Tim about that. So
absolutely, and you can also find Byron over on the Patreon as well. You're over there. You're one of my supporters, Byron. So thank you.
I like Patreon.
I like Patreon a lot. I actually support 2 or 3 creators, and so we put out and I just put out an interview. So I'll shameless self plug. But John Pugliano, for anybody who knows John Pugliano, it's
on my agenda tomorrow to listen to.
Oh, it's a good one. I don't want to toot my own horn, but man, I could talk to John all day long. So if anybody's up for it, it's $5 a month, and it's a good way to support what we do. So. And John Palmer, I need to shout you out, brother, because I want to tell you, I don't believe there is anyone in this community who comments on every one of my videos faster than John Palmer. I will get legit, like, I don't know how the man does it. It'll be, I'll put out a 12-minute video, in 11 minutes after it's released, he'll be like, Tim, that's a great video. Thank you.
Part of that's because it takes me 6 minutes to listen to a 12-minute video, Tim.
That's right, because I talk too slow. I understand. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you, John. I appreciate the support, brother.
You bet, man. I support you because I believe in you.
Oh, and we got, there we go. Nate sent, Galt's speech there. So, okay. Anyway, folks, that's it. Let's wrap her up. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week. Everybody do the freeze.